What does dementia look like? We're going to break down Joe Biden's body language to determine what's actually going on with him. That's next. And we're back, Schaikers. First, this video is not political, and this is not a political channel. We are a body language, behavior, and investigation channel. We do occasionally cover politicians, but this video is for educational purposes, so you can recognize dementia. Also, for those of you who are specifically Democrat, you do have options to choose another nominee to run in 2024 who may be in better mental health and who will thereby have a better chance at winning the general election.
We'll take a look at it.
Do you want to see Joe Biden?
I don't want to answer that question.
I'm not sure if any of us know of any 86-year-olds who should be running the entire country.
Deal with that until after the midterms.
I don't believe he's running for re-election.
Do you plan to run for re-election?
Yes.
Yes.
As you all know, Joseph R. Biden Jr. is the most physically fit U.S. president we've ever had. Okay, maybe not. However, he does stay quite physically active, which is great for someone who is going to be 80 years old this year. Over the past couple of years, we've been noticing that President Biden has been exhibiting even more curious body language and behavior, causing us to strongly suspect he has dementia. So we're going to break down President Biden's body language and behavior and compare it to common signs and symptoms of dementia to find out what's really going on with him. Now, let's get started.
49% of registered voters disagreeing with the statement, Joe Biden is mentally fit.
Wow.
Not even a majority of Democrats who responded strongly affirmed that statement. Why do you suppose such large segments of the American electorate have come to harbor such profound concerns about your cognitive fitness? Thank you.
I have no idea.
We have never had a president as old as Joe Biden. This list is the president and their age at the time of inauguration. Biden is first at 78.2 years old. As I said, he's turning 80 this year, but that's when he was inaugurated. Donald Trump was at 70.6 years. Ronald Reagan was almost 70 years old when he was inaugurated president. If you're old enough, you may remember the media questioning President Reagan's mental fitness, given that at the time he was the oldest president in U.S. history.
Is there any doubt in your mind that you would be able to function in such circumstances?
Not at all, Mr. Truitt, and I want you to know that also I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
President Reagan's age and soft-spoken nature was a running joke on SNL.
Some may wonder which was worse, your knowing or your not knowing.
Well, all I can say is I didn't know. Well, I hope I've answered your questions as best I could, given the very little that I know.
But he actually showed no signs of dementia as president.
Okay, get back in here. All right, let's get down to business. I'm only gonna go through this once, so it's essential that you pay attention. 1, Casey.
Yes, sir.
You'll spearhead our new operation to fund the Contras.
Although in 1994, at age 83, just 5 years after leaving office, President Reagan received a suspected diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, and after a steady decline, he died from the disease in 2004. 10 years after diagnosis. Although Alzheimer's disease is the most common type of dementia, it's not the only type. There is vascular dementia, Lewy bodies dementia, LBD, Parkinson's disease dementia, mixed dementia, frontal temporal dementia, FTD, and Huntington's disease. Dementia is the loss of a person's cognitive functioning, thinking, remembering, and reasoning. And yes, it is very sad for their loved ones because they'll slowly forget who their loved ones are. It's also sad for the diagnosed because when they're diagnosed, they still have the capacity to know that their memories are going to slowly fade away. The DSM-5 discusses diagnosing dementia, such as Alzheimer's disease, as a clear decline in memory and learning from a previous level of performance. It's a steady and progressive decline in cognitive function without plateaus and no evidence of mixed etiology. To summarize, their memory and cognition keeps declining and it's not explained by another illness or condition. Specifically with Alzheimer's disease, due to the plaques and tangles, neurons in the brain are injured, causing them to die throughout the brain in atrophy. So this is actually a physical loss in brain volume. The ventricles in the brain will get bigger. The gyri model here are going to get smaller. Those are the folds within the brain. So if these gyri, or these folds in the brain, are getting smaller, what do you think that means for the sulci, these smaller grooves, and these bigger grooves, which are called fissures? What do you think it means for those? Yeah, they're going to get really, really deep and wide. So it's an actual loss of brain volume with dementia. Ever hear the notion that we only use 10% of our brain? Do you think that's true? No, it's not true at all. We use almost all of our brain all of the time. Mild to moderate common symptoms of dementia, specifically Alzheimer's disease, according to the NIH and ALZ.org, are memory loss and confusion. This clip right here, frankly, just triggered this video. Originally, I was like, I don't want to touch politics. But then when I saw this, it was really, I just couldn't believe it. I think I watched it 10 times. I just couldn't believe what I was watching. And I think I looked it up elsewhere because I thought it could have been doctored. I just couldn't believe that this was actually true. So watch it, take a look, and then we'll break it down.
Now our great speaker, our partner, who all of these bills we've met.
So the guy who's shaking everyone's hand, his name is Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader. And Chuck Schumer goes and shakes everyone's hand. Chuck Schumer first shakes Joe Biden's hand. Okay, makes sense. He's the president of the United States. Makes sense to shake his hand first. Okay. But
now our great
in 2.8 seconds, Joe Biden has his hand out again, ready for a handshake. He forgot, at least in 2.8 seconds, probably even a little bit sooner. Probably even maybe, I think you can even look at some body language and expect maybe around even a second and a half if you really look at it closely. But in 2.8 seconds, we know, and it seems for sure, that Joe Biden has already forgotten that he already shook Chuck Schumer's hand and has his hand out again, ready for a handshake. This is not like, hey, next day, hey, yeah, when was my hand shook? Oh, when was that? It just happened. And he doesn't remember. He already has his hand out. And of course, if you look at his body language, he's totally confused of why Chuck Schumer wouldn't want to shake his hand, stroking his chin and a smile and a little bit of embarrassment, like the Senate Majority Leader forgot to shake the President of the United States' hand. Why did you shake everyone else's hand but not mine? It's just really sad.
Now our great
poor judgment leading to bad decisions.
I trust the capacity of the Afghan military, who is better trained, better equipped, and more competent in terms of conducting war. Russia will be held accountable if it invades, and it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion, and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, etc.
There are some people who say that Putin will only look at what he said at the beginning and say, that's a green light for me to go in.
Often repeating themselves or asking the same questions because they don't recall already asking it or already saying it. Trouble handling money and paying bills. Wandering and getting lost. Secret Service agents just like flagging him in to the White House to make sure he doesn't wander off, apparently. But apparently Biden also wanted to, for whatever reason, walk on the grass to get to the office. It just shows that the people around him know that there is a little bit of a problem, that he needs to be guided a lot more than, we'll call it just a younger president. Taking longer to complete normal daily tasks. Losing things and misplacing them, sometimes in odd places, or sometimes it may just be under their nose and they just don't remember putting it there and they just don't remember doing that, and it happens to fall off their face because they don't remember actually putting it on their face in the first place. Mood and personality changes with increases in anxiety, agitation, aggression, and outbursts of anger.
Mr. President, what's your message to Democrats who don't want you to run again?
They want me to run.
2/3 say they
Read
don't.
the polls. Read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same.
which, well, whoa, get sensitive much?
There's a lot of guys wanted. I'm not worried. So much.
Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack.
Impulsive behavior such as undressing in inappropriate times and using vulgar language.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
Difficulty with language, specifically reading, writing, and working with numbers.
That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. The National Guard, that's a fancy way of saying governors need to be able to get funding when they need to bring their National Guard into play. From the time I got to the Senate 180 years ago, as well as my tenure as vice president.
And with this clip here, notice Kamala Harris's uneasy body language when she realizes that Joe Biden said the wrong nation.
Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom. The Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never weaken the resolve of the free world.
But also notice Nancy Pelosi on the right here, who's actually older than Joe Biden. She didn't flinch at all.
The Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never weaken the resolve of the free world. These are their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies. I am very willing to let the American public judge my physical and mental my physical as well as my mental fitness, and to make a judgment about who I am.
Difficulty organizing thoughts and thinking logically.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping.
The inability to learn new things. Problems coping with new situations.
Yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas as well. Merry
Thank
Christmas, and let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon. I agree.
Difficulty carrying out multi-step tasks.
It's President Biden's cheat sheet. He literally tipped his hand, showing a card with step-by-step instructions. You enter the Roosevelt room and say hello. You take your seat.
This right here is literally black and white proof that Joe Biden apparently has dementia. There is no reason other than dementia to explain why Joe Biden has a card like that in a meeting. No reason. And the words "you" and "your" on his cheat sheet are capitalized and bolded to make sure that he knows that it's talking about him and not somebody else. A year into his presidency plus, and also he's been a vice president for 8 years and a senator, a U.S. senator for decades. And he has a cheat sheet like that to tell him the most basic things, like you enter the room, you say hello.
You give brief comments, you thank participants, you depart.
Problems remembering friends and family.
By the way, this is my little sister, Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh, no, you switched on me. This is my wife, this is my sister. All kidding aside, of course, President Harris is a proud Howard alum.
Hallucinations, delusions, and paranoia, which is actually common among 50% of those who have Alzheimer's.
America. God bless you all.
Watch this clip here, see what you think, and then we'll break it down. A lot of people don't know, but with dementia, it's actually quite common to have hallucinations, delusions, see things, see people. And when you watch this clip here, it definitely seems that Biden is seeing something. And if you look at his hand motion, it's like he was going to shake someone's hand. And if you notice too, it seems that his eyes kind of widen in a little bit of surprise. Oh, I didn't see you. You were so close. Oh, you're so close to me this whole time when I was giving the speech. In reality, no one was there. And then if you notice, as he's trying to give a handshake to no one that's there, he quickly turns over to his right, as if the being that he saw quickly moved, or maybe he saw something else over there that was behind him. And the way that Biden quickly shifted to his right, it seemed that he was startled, oddly looking at the American flag and what was behind him, but there's no one there. There's nothing there. And even starts walking back towards the flag to what appears to be to investigate what he thinks he apparently saw. Loss of spontaneity, shortened attention span, change in sleep patterns, sometimes insomnia, trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, so sleeping in odd places or times of day.
Agreement which will affect the lives of generations to come. You are in a position of extraordinary power. You can change forever the trajectory we are on. You can make a world that is once again full of hope, not fear. This is my message from Earth to God. On behalf of the 15.
Have the brain out again here because I want to show you this part right here. This is the cerebellum, and that is responsible for the balance and coordination, which is of course also susceptible to atrophy as well.
You guys ride bikes? Well, they have some that have this thing you put your toe in that constrains your foot so it doesn't slide off the pedal. When I was getting off the bike, it got stuck on the right side.
And many times, denial of the problem.
Specifically, have you taken a cognitive test?
No, I haven't taken a test. Why the hell would I take a test?
Have you ever had an elderly family member who refused to give up driving or independent living, denying all your valid concerns? It is a very common problem because they don't want to be restricted with limited freedom. They know that if they concede, it's only further downhill for them and less freedom. They don't want to acknowledge something that they would rather believe doesn't exist. And the same mental deficits that cause them to be a hazard also causes them to have limited capacity to remember that they personally are a hazard. It is because within a short while, they do not remember being beeped at, yelled at, leaving the water running, or the stove on.
The author says he was stuttering at age 4, and he writes after interviewing you, I've been following practically everything he's said for months now, and sometimes what is characterized as a memory lapse is indeed a stutter.
And if you notice here, this interviewer is almost trying to give Biden an out, just saying like, hey, just blame it on your stuttering. You got a stuttering problem. It's your stuttering. It's stuttering.
That doesn't cross my mind that I'm stuttering, but apparently people will say occasionally, particularly when I'm tired, I'll say, and I'll find myself searching for a second.
What's interesting is that Joe Biden excuses his lapse of memory as merely being tired. However, many people with dementia experience what is called sundown syndrome. It's a phenomenon where those diagnosed with dementia begin to feel additional anxiety, hallucination, paranoia, and confusion when the sun starts to go down. What is very interesting about Alzheimer's disease is that sometimes people live decades without the disease being suspected. This is because people are pre-symptomatic until there is massive damage done to the brain. It's a long process which starts with beta amyloid proteins clumping in plaques between neurons from 5 to 10 years, and then atrophy of the brain for another 5 to 10 years, and then finally it causes a change in a person's memory, which sometimes takes 5 years for it to build to a point where it's noticeable. Therefore, by the time the disease is suspected, the patient already has mild to moderate suspected Alzheimer's. If you notice throughout this video, I'm very careful with calling it an Alzheimer's disease diagnosis, because Alzheimer's disease cannot officially be diagnosed until post-mortem, because the brain must be looked at under a microscope to confirm the presence of plaques and tangles to confirm that it was Alzheimer's disease. Now, additional symptoms to make it severe dementia, again, according to the NIH, are things like inability to speak, weight loss, seizures, difficulty swallowing, groaning, increased sleep, and loss of bowel and bladder control. Therefore, the patient's brain is so damaged and deteriorated that they literally forget how to do some of the most basic things required to function. Typically, someone with severe Alzheimer's disease is going to be in an inpatient care facility or hospice. Biden is not in severe territory yet, but the average life expectancy after a suspected diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease is only 4 to 8 years. And as we mentioned earlier, Ronald Reagan lived 10 years. It also appears that President Biden is refusing to be screened for it, surely in fear that his cabinet will invoke the 25th Amendment, which will remove him from office. Therefore, if we assume he should have normally been diagnosed in 2020 with suspected Alzheimer's, we could only expect him to live until 2028, when he is about 86 years old. However, given the constant decline that the disease causes, he will likely be in an inpatient care facility for the last several years of his life. Therefore, if he runs for re-election and wins, there's a very slim possibility that he's going to be able to finish out his second term. Additionally, as he continues his term in office, more people will begin to acknowledge that his condition is a problem, and his condition is sadly getting worse each day, which is common of dementia. Now take a look at Ronald Reagan in these clips, which were in 1992, 2 years before he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's.
Going upstairs where I was born. This is the room where you were born. Well. Now we don't have any Reagan furniture. That's all I'm thinking. So we got what we thought was appropriate for the period.
I wouldn't remember.
No.
But my father was running down the street, ran down the street to get him. Because it was so early in the morning.
2 years after the Tampico trip, the president would announce he had Alzheimer's. Wendland recalls now there may have been a foreshadowing moment when Reagan is visibly alarmed in the gift store when he can't find Nancy, who's right in front of him.
Yeah, he seemed not to recognize his wife from behind, but other than that, he was telling a very specific story of how his father ran down the street to get the doctor because he was born unexpectedly. Now watch part of this speech by Ronald Reagan in 1994, just a few months before he was diagnosed by a doctor as likely having Alzheimer's. See if you notice any symptoms.
I can't tell you how thrilled Nancy and I are to be here with you tonight to celebrate, as Margaret said, the 44th anniversary of my 39th birthday. Haley told me he was going to gather a few friends for dinner tonight, but I had no idea. Before I get started here, I want to thank my dear friend Margaret Thatcher for being part of yet another important milestone. I must say that returning to Washington today really brought back memories. As our plane headed toward the airport, I looked down on the White House, and it was just like the good old days. The Rose Garden, the South Lawn, David Gergen.
Right, no real observable symptoms to speak of. But compare Ronald Reagan with his last public speech to Joe Biden. I mean, gosh. Joe Biden's showing many symptoms, and he's still president, and he doesn't want to apparently have a cognition test and to see if he may have some kind of dementia. And Ronald Reagan there was months away from being diagnosed by a doctor as likely having Alzheimer's. The point is that given his symptoms and comparing it to Ronald Reagan, another president who's giving a speech and shows no symptoms of dementia, but Joe Biden is showing symptoms of dementia but claims he doesn't have it and claims he's mentally okay. What it seems to say is that Joe Biden went from mild dementia, where Ronald Reagan is in this clip, to more moderate dementia, moving towards severe dementia. Dementia does not get better. It does not plateau. It just keeps on getting worse. Now in the comments, why do you think Joe Biden should run for re-election or step aside? Let everyone know in the comments below. We have so much more we can discuss on this, and we'll discuss it further on my podcast. And if you're wondering who I voted for in the last presidential election, I think I'm finally gonna say in a podcast soon. However, I think 99% of you are not gonna be able to guess correctly of who I voted for. So if you're not already subscribed to the Schaik podcast, you may want to do that because we cover these current event topics in more conversational detail, covering behavior, psychology, and body language. The Schaik podcast is everywhere you get your podcast, including Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. You can watch the show on YouTube. Everywhere you get your podcasts, that's where you can get the podcast Shaked. Subscribe because we don't want you to miss out on new body language, behavioral, and investigative videos. See you at the top.